Dr. Adesina Akinwumi.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. Your Excellency, William Ruto, President of Kenya, and our gracious host, and my dear brother. Your Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of Comoros and Chairperson of the African Union. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government. Your Excellencies, the First Ladies. Your Excellency Musa Faki, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. We are also joined today by Your Excellency Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the United Nations. Your Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. Your Excellency Mustafa Madhoudi, Prime Minister of Egypt. Your Excellency Sultan Al-Jaber, COP28 President-designate, honorable ministers, ambassadors, heads of diplomatic missions, the amazing youth and women of Africa. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everyone. Habari sa asubuhi. I think I got it right somehow. I wish to commend you, Your Excellency President Ruto, for your excellent leadership in convening this Africa Climate Summit, and for your dynamic and passionate leadership in spearheading Africa's first Climate Summit. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for hosting us all in this beautiful nature-blessed country of Kenya. The African Development Bank is pleased to be a major sponsor of the Africa Climate Summit. The presence in such large numbers of Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, ministers and development partners from around the world says it all. Africa's voice on climate change will resonate across the world. The Africa Climate Summit will shape the future pathway of Africa's development. We gather because the people of Africa expect us to act. We gather because the future of the youth of Africa is at stake. We gather because we must galvanize global actions on climate. We gather because our collective existence is at risk. Climate change is short-changing Africa. Droughts and floods have been increasing across the continent. No country is spared. As we gather today, if we strain our ears enough, we will hear the calls of urgency from farmers whose crops and livestock are being destroyed, the voices of fishing folks whose catch is reducing and livelihoods are being imperiled, the voices of the young whose future is being compromised, the voices of women and children who bear the brunt of climate change, the voices of economies unable to cope with the ever-rising costs of climate-induced risks. We have a duty and responsibility to hear these voices and to act with a greater sense of urgency. And responding requires action at three levels. At the global level, the developed economies must meet their commitment to provide $100 billion annually in climate finance. The global climate financial architecture must be changed to prioritize the needs of Africa. At the national level, we must accelerate actions on climate adaptation. And that is why the African Development Bank has committed to providing $25 billion towards climate finance by 2025. We have also launched the African Adaptation Acceleration Program, together with the Global Center on Adaptation, the largest climate adaptation program in the world. Africa must develop with what it has, not what it does not have. Africa is blessed with large sources of renewable energy in the world. Renewables from solar, hydro, wind, and geothermal. But we cannot power Africa with potential. We must fully unlock Africa's renewable energy potential. That's why the African Development Bank is implementing a $20 billion Desert to Power program to harness the power of solar and deliver electricity for 250 million people. We must power every home, every school, every hospital, and provide stable, affordable, and reliable power. But we must, Your Excellencies, be pragmatic. Africa must use its natural gas and combine it with renewable resources. The International Energy Agency's analysis shows that doing so would only add 0.5% to global emissions. Give us space to grow. We must ensure that Africa's food and agricultural systems are climate resilient. The African Development Bank's flagship program, Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, has provided 12 million farmers in 21 countries with climate-resilient agricultural technologies. In Ethiopia, climate-resilient wheat varieties supported by the bank has helped it to become self-sufficient in wheat in just 3 years. We are acting at scale to feed Africa with climate resilience. Under the leadership of President Macky Sall, as the then chairperson of the African Union, and the strong leadership of you, our heads of state and government, we succeeded with the Feed Africa Summit held in Dakar in January. We developed food and agriculture delivery compacts for African countries. We have mobilized, Your Excellency Presidents, heads of state and government, globally, $72 billion to support African countries to implement these food and agricultural delivery compacts and to assure food security and food sovereignty within 5 years, and doing so with climate-resilient agricultural systems. I wish to recognize all development partners from around the world and the African Union Commission who work so tirelessly with us to make this happen. Thank you very much. We will repeat this at the Africa Climate Summit with the development of climate change adaptation investment compacts to help channel financing to national climate adaptation action at scale. We must ensure that resources mobilized do not stay simply in government offices, but reach and protect the lives of people in our villages, in our towns, and in our cities. All lives must be protected from climate change. We must put the youth and women at the core of climate financing. That's why the African Development Bank and the Global Center on Adaptation are announcing here today the launch of a $1 billion facility for Youth Adapt program that will accelerate access to financing for the youth to tackle climate change. The youth are not just the future of Africa, the youth are the present of Africa. The African Development Bank is also rolling out the establishment of youth entrepreneurship investment banks, new financial institutions that will support and grow the businesses of the youth all across Africa. Finally, we must revalue, Your Excellencies, the wealth of Africa by accounting for the proper valuation of its abundant natural resources, including these vast forests that sequester carbon. Few may know that the Congo Forest Basin is the world's largest carbon lungs, larger than the Amazon forest. Yet, Africa's rich nature wealth and the global value of its carbon it sequesters for the world are not accounted for in the estimation of its GDP. It is not enough to praise Africa for its rich natural capital. Its GDP must take that into consideration. Africa's GDP must therefore be revalued based on its carbon sequestration and biodiversity, which provide global public goods. If this is done, the debt to adjusted GDP ratio of several African countries much lower, and they will have greater headroom. The debt to adjusted GDP ratio of several African countries much lower, and they will have greater headroom to borrow more financing to support their development, including investing in the greening of their economies. We must, Your Excellencies, therefore, turn Africa's economies green, not because others ask us to do so, but because it is in our interest to do so. Africa must develop its own carbon markets, properly price its carbon, and turn its vast carbon sinks into new sources of enormous wealth. Africa cannot be nature rich and cash poor. As we look towards COP28, African needs must be front and center, powered by the leadership of our heads of state and government, our youth and the private sector, and the voices of our communities. We must be the vuvuzelas of climate financing for Africa. Together with partners from around the world, let's make it happen for Africa. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Gracias. Shukran. Asante sana.
Excellencies, our next speaker.